We want to bring in our State House insiders now. Antoine Seawright, our Democratic strategist, Dave Wilson, our Republican strategist. Going to get your feedback now on last night's State of the State address. Governor McMaster, among other things, talking about how strong our state is doing when it comes to money, saying we have the largest budget surplus and the lowest debt in our state's history. Dave, Republicans pretty happy with the address last night, correct?
There are a lot of positive things that are coming out of that right now, JR. When you think about the fact that the governor is talking about how can we turn around and lower tax rates to make us more competitive with our neighbors all across the Southeast, that's an important issue that's going to be coming up. And I know there are two bills right now in the Senate. Senator Josh Kimbrell out of Spartanburg and Senator Sean Bennett out of the Low Country have both presented bills that turn around and say we've got to do something to deal with this tax rate and get that down so that we can make it easier for businesses to want to come to South Carolina and to continue to grow that prosperity that we're seeing right now.
Look, what the governor failed to mention last night was the reason we have such a handsome surplus in South Carolina is because of President Joseph R. Biden and the Majority Whip, Congressman Jim Clyburn, because zero other members of our delegation voted to support the American Rescue Act that sent billions of dollars to the state in order for us to have the surplus and make the investments that the governor is talking about using the money to make. Sadly, I think the governor pissed away an opportunity to really bring the state together. In fact, I don't know if the speech was worth the government paper it was printed on. He wanted to beat up on the president and use it as an opportunity to flirt with national politics when that's not what we do in South Carolina. We talk about South Carolina issues and things he can actually control. What he should have done was talk about how to bridge the necessary gaps in the state, bring people together, let South Carolina be an example to show how Democrats and Republicans can work together in order to get something done, not the dysfunction we see in Washington, D.C. I was disappointed that the governor used the State of the State address to attack the president, who's been very helpful to the state of South Carolina.
I want to move on to some of the things going on over at the State House, other than the redrawing of those district lines, which has already taken up a lot of lawmakers' time since they've been back in session. What are some of the other big topics you expect to see addressed this year, Antoine, with lawmakers in both the House and the Senate?
Well, I can't speak to what Republicans will tend to prioritize because they are in charge of both chambers, but I do know access to health care, getting our arms around this pandemic, making sure our teachers are paid, investing in infrastructure, making sure the gap between rural and urban and suburban South Carolina is closed are going to be the priorities. And of course, invested in K through 16 education. Those are going to be priorities of the Democrats. The Certificate of Needs piece of legislation has sucked up a decent bit of time so far in the session. I think they will be back on that next week. Between that and redistricting, that may suck up the first month and a half or so of the legislative session.
And today it was set for special order, JR. The medical marijuana bill that Tom Davis has been pushing for the last 6-7 years now, it is finally now going to be coming up for debate. And there's a big split that exists right now on this particular issue. And the question is whether or not you're going to set up an industrial marijuana complex in South Carolina or not, like you've seen in 40 other states across the United States. In 18 of those, we've actually seen that they've actually switched over to recreational marijuana within a matter of months or years. And in that particular case, we don't want to have that happening in South Carolina. So we've got to look for alternatives that actually give people the medication that they need and still be able to protect the culture that we have in this state.
JR, what I have not heard so far, and I think Dave and I are on the same page about this, is we have not heard chatter about the need and the political will to pass a hate crimes bill. WLTX covered it very handsomely, the incident in Sumter. We are one of very few states in the country that have not passed a real hate crimes piece of legislation. I hope that tends to be the priorities for Republicans and Democrats, both in the House and the Senate.
And Dave, is that something you think will get passed this year?
I don't see the hate crimes legislation making its way, because the reality is a lot of the folks who are in the Senate right now are going, that's not a priority item for us, not because there aren't hate crimes that go on out there, but because every crime that we have in South Carolina right now already has penalties, and these are penalties that go on top of that. And there's a big concern that exists right now for nuances in the language that are in there, that if the Senate does take it up, there are going to be some specific pieces of that legislation they're going to want to amend before they send it back to the House.
All right. Dave Wilson, our Republican strategist, Antoine Seawright, our Democratic strategist. Guys, thank you so very much.